4 years ago, I remember coming on here after the Bears made their move up from 3-2 to waste that pick on Mitchell Trubisky. And I shit all over the Bears and I shit all over Ryan Pace and the decision because I knew it was bad. And 4 years later, I've clearly been vindicated, validated. And there's no disagreement here, right? Can we at least, like, even for those that want to be Mitch truthers, can you agree he sucked? Because it's a key thing. It's important. It doesn't make you a bad person. But especially after last night, it is time to pack up and move on to the next era of Chicago Bears football, which officially began last night with the move up by the Chicago Bears from 20-11 to select Justin Fields, the quarterback out of Ohio State. And it all comes down to this fundamental question. Is Justin Fields finally going to be the QB savior of the Chicago Bears? And I know that any reasonable Bears fan wanted them to come out of this draft with a quarterback, if at all possible, reasonable, attainable. Because you're understanding, finally, for some of you, others have picked it up long ago, that the old way of Bears football is stupid, dumb, and doesn't win championships. You have to have a franchise quarterback to build around, and there is no more negotiation about that. Like, that has to be true. And you have to continue to look until you find that guy. Until you have one, you don't have shit. You don't have a chance. And that's just a true story, period. So the Bears made their move last night to get the guy that they believe, think, hope can be that dude. And a lot of you fans are buying into that and totally on board with that. And you know what? I got to tell you, I'm torn on this. This video will not be like 4 years ago where I totally ranted and raved about the stupidity of the pick. Not going to be like that quite at all. But I want to make it clear, just because a team makes a move to get a young quarterback in the draft in the first round, while that naturally can be exciting and that naturally can be refreshing and that naturally can be cool and give you reason for hope and optimism, and it does, and it even fills me up a little bit with that. It absolutely does. That in no way, shape, or form means that that dude is actually going to be the right one. It's not just about taking a quarterback, it's about taking the right quarterback and putting them in the right situation, which we should be all too familiar with. See Mitchell Trubisky, see Rex Grossman, see Cade McNown. Now you're going to point to those as the three quarterbacks, the last three quarterbacks that the Bears have drafted in the first round, and you're going to say, yeah, all three of those guys sucked. And all three of those guys were largely panned as draft selections during their time, whether it was 93 with McSuckass or 2003 with Saxy Raxy or 2017 with Trubisky. Those were widely panned for a reason. And you're going to say Justin Fields is not them. That's a fair statement. Justin Fields certainly is not Cade McSuckass. He certainly is not Rex Grossman. And he's not even Trubisky. Not even close. Those guys did not have the elite physical NFL traits that Justin Fields does. Justin Fields has the arm to make all the required NFL throws. He is a special athlete at the quarterback position. He's a guy that can run and make big plays happen with his feet. He could extend plays with his feet in a manner that Trubisky was unwilling to do, and frankly, the last 2 years was seemingly afraid to do. And just like any young quarterback, Fields has his flaws. There are concerns, and people are going to emphasize them or minimize them, but you can't ignore them. So the reality is you're right. Like, this does feel a little different. You can actually see a pathway where you don't have to lie to yourself that he could be the franchise savior of the Chicago Bears. I totally, fundamentally agree with that. If you ever thought Cade McNown was that dude, you were a moron. Same thing with Sexy Rexy, and I'll say the same damn thing about Trubisky. You were clown school shit. And over the past 4 years, you may have tried to convince yourself that he could be the guy. He's a nice guy. Who gives a shit? Snort coke out of fucking strippers' butt cracks. I don't give a shit. Be a big-time quarterback. Do what big-time quarterbacks do. Fields is not that. He's just not. I will say that I did not have as high of a grade on Justin Fields as many others that you see did. There are a number of folks that had him as QB2, maybe QB3 in this draft. Some even had him as QB1. I didn't. I had a mid-second round grade on him. Because there were certain Trubisky-like elements in the mental aspects of the game from a processing, a reading, and reacting to what he sees standpoint that concerned me significantly. And while I thought his arm was good, he has plenty of NFL arm talent, it's not a special or elite arm. He has more than enough. But when I look at some of those things, mechanical flaws, I did not see this elite prospect that many of you now as Bears fans are going to convince yourself that he is. You're going to point to, well, you look at his performances in the spotlight in the big games. You know what? He had some big-time results in some big-time games, and that can matter to a certain degree. That in and of itself, though, can cloud your better judgment. Because you can throw for 6 touchdowns in a college football playoff semifinal and had it because Clemson's defense was terrible or your skill talent around you at Ohio State was damn good and they were able to make big plays happen. Their offense under Ryan Day was able to mask some of the deficiencies, and all of that is true. You can't just focus on the result. You have to look at the projectable skills and the projectable traits. And there are flaws there. You're asking me, yeah, Fields was like QB5, QB6 on my board. The reason I don't rant about this as much as I did Trubisky 4 years ago is the key difference is that Fields has elite physical traits that I can see translating. I could see Justin Fields, if he works on those areas and can significantly improve in those major deficiency areas that are major deficiencies, stop trying to minimize them, he could be quarterback 1 out of this draft. That was never going to happen with Trubisky. It was never going to happen with Rex. It was never going to happen with Cade McSuckass. That's the key difference. But if you're expecting me to be giddy about this, I'm staying true to my evaluation of quarterbacks. I'm staying true to my grading, which in recent years has panned out pretty well. Not perfect, obviously, but pretty well. I do wonder a little bit, personally, I think it's important to own up to bias. My bias is not against him because he's an Ohio State quarterback. I'd give a shit less about that. And if that's why you're evaluating somebody the way you are, that's really stupid. Really, really stupid. That's like the old, don't draft a Jeff Tedford quarterback and then Aaron Rodgers falls to pick 24 to Green Bay in 2005 type of bullshit. No, you look at the projectable skills and traits. I look at them, though, and when I see elements of a game, of a prospect that remind me or very reminiscent of Trubisky, that's going to give me significant pause or cause for concern, and I'm not going to apologize for that. Now, maybe because of that sensitivity to recency bias with Trubisky, it clouded my judgment slightly with Fields, and that could potentially prove out to be the case. But beyond all of that, again, I want to emphasize, you got the quarterback, but is he the quarterback? Time will tell. It is important that he's in the right situation with the right people around him, that you build the team around him. That's the reality. He can have all the talent in the world, but if the situation sucks, he is likely going to suck. What also does not change is the fact of some very basic fundamental truths here. Is that a lot of you are going to praise Ryan Pace for going up and making this deal and making it happen. I would say I'll give him credit for this. He at least understood that he had to get a quarterback. He at least knew that he had no choice. He also was able to wait until pick 11 to trade up to get one, as opposed to totally having to drop pants and trade in the top 5 or 7 and ruin future drafts even more. So I will give him credit on that. And I will give him credit on if you're going to trade up from 20 to 11, even though I did have a higher grade on Mac Jones, I understand trading up and giving that much up. You're doing that for a guy with elite physical tools and elite upside. Fields has that. Mac Jones does not. So I'm with that. But that's about where the credit ends. Because you must understand a couple of fundamental things. while it may seem a little hypocritical for me to talk about, the price they paid to move up, where I talk all the time about if you don't have a quarterback, you have nothing and no price is too big. You also got to understand the game that you're in when it comes to the draft. And Pace simply gave up too much to move up from 20 to 11. That's a fact. That can bother you all you want, but it's true. There was no reason to have to give up that much, and he did. Because he did what he always fucking does, which is panic. He doesn't understand how to play the draft game. He's like a 5-year-old kid that you just gave $5 and he can't wait to blow his wad at fucking Walmart or the candy store. So he trades up from 20 to 11, gives up a first and a fourth rounder next year, along with the fifth rounder this year to package with pick 20. And that's too much to pay by any measurement, any draft value chart. That was too much to pay by a decent margin. Then you take a step back and you say, wait a second. They cut Kyle Fuller to take that money, basically traded, if you look at it a different way, traded Kyle Fuller for Andy fucking Dalton when they were already cap strapped as a team up against the salary cap, to then turn around and trade up to draft Justin Fields. That indicates this team didn't know what the hell they were doing in the lead up to the draft. This indicates that he didn't have this well thought out or well planned. This indicates that Pace is still a panicky fucking moron. None of that changes here. None of that. None of it. And there is a part of me that says, once they got outside of the top 10, you probably could have waited a little bit longer to see if somebody else was going to move up. Maybe they would have. That's true. We'll never know. But Mac Jones ended up making it up to 15. Nobody traded up ahead of them. Unless you're talking about the Jets, who traded up to 14 with the Vikings, and they took an offensive lineman. So the Bears maybe could have sat and waited until 13 and see if the Chargers would have moved off of the slot to take Slater. Maybe you had to give up a little bit less. Or maybe you roll the dice and let the draft play out and wait until pick 15 and see what New England does, and then you can potentially trade up to 16 where Arizona was and take whatever quarterback's left and pay significantly less in terms of a price. Now, for some of you, you may not be comfortable with taking that risk. I understand that. And I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying, it is also an indication that Ryan Pace doesn't understand how to play the damn draft game, and part of it is a game. And he just doesn't understand it. And after all these years, he still doesn't understand it. He panics. And some of them are going to point out, you traded up traded away a bunch of stuff to move up yet again to get yet another young quarterback. How'd that work out with Trubisky? That is also a very true statement. Maybe, just maybe, all you idiots that sat there and got all giggly tits about winning those meaningless ass games at the end of this past season now realize the damage that was caused by winning those completely fucking meaningless games. Instead of being in the top 10 where they could have just stayed pat and taken Justin Fields, they had to trade up and give up a future first and fourth round pick in order to do so in a spot that they should have fucking been in to begin with. Also, you could sit there and celebrate a 7-seeded 8-8 team getting whooped by the Saints in the wild card round. Come the fuck on. Now, there's going to be the questions of Atlanta passed on the home state kid in Justin Fields to take Kyle Pitts. What's up with that? Detroit had a chance to take Justin Fields, knowing potentially that he could end up in Chicago. They had to know that was a chance or a possibility. They were comfortable enough with Jared Goff or the thought potentially of Justin Fields ending up in Chicago. And if you think teams don't know that this is coming, you're crazy. Carolina, you can talk about Sam Darnold all you want, but Justin Fields, if you feel like he's a better prospect, then you take him even if you already traded for Sam Darnold. The Panthers didn't. Nobody traded up into the Panthers spot. The Broncos passed on him. Nobody traded up to the Cowboys spot to take a quarterback. And when the Eagles did trade up from 12 to 10, they took Devontae Smith instead because they wanted to jump the Giants. So it should lead you to ask a question like, what do some of these teams know about Justin Fields? Because there were other teams that were certainly positioned to where they could have and maybe should have rolled the dice on Justin Fields, and they failed to do so. That is either an indication of my evaluation of Justin Fields is more accurate than a lot of you will want to choose to listen to, respect, or believe, or it's an indication of why some of those teams are picking where the fuck they are, and you understand just how stupid some of these teams are. And then you look at teams like Detroit, like you're celebrating taking an offensive tackle where you were potentially in the catbird seat, where you could have dealt down and gotten a boatload of picks potentially for somebody to trade up into the spot and take one of those quarterbacks. Carolina sat there a year after taking nothing but defensive players and took a corner in the top 10 because Matt Rhule didn't know what the fuck he's doing. The Broncos sat there after bringing in Kyle Fuller in the offseason. I don't care 1 year contract or not. You have to be able to score points. You're in a division with the damn Chiefs and now the Chargers. You have nothing at quarterback, Bridgewater and lock my ass, and you're taking a fucking corner. The hell's wrong with you? So you could certainly make the argument that the reason Justin Fields was available at 11 is because teams that were picking ahead don't know what the hell they're doing. And either of these could be true, and ultimately time is going to tell whether it was teams really knew something about Fields and Jones and that's why they didn't take them, especially when you talk about the premium of the importance of the quarterback position, or teams are just that stupid. And either could be true. I want Justin Fields to be the savior so damn bad. I can't even begin to tell you. I do not want to waste cycles on another 4 or 5 years of having to sit there and listen to people try to tell me that he's something that he's not. I want him to be everything that they tell me he is and so much more. There is a chance that he can be. And I have no choice now. I have to buy into that. I have to believe in that. I hope Bears fans are also comfortable with the fact that next year you won't have a first and fourth round pick. Was it worth that price? And before you just jump in and say, yeah, it was Justin Fields, of course it was. Was it really for a team that already went without a first round pick the last 2 years? You're talking about kicking open the door to the championship window. How? It might give you a reset and a better chance to build a championship contender someday. But don't think you have a championship window right now with this fucking team, even with Fields. Let's be real. Then there's still going to be this notion that they're going to try and force starting Andy Dalton this year. And I want to be clear on this. You moved up big to go get Justin Fields. Any comparisons to Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes or this guy sitting behind this guy, those are fucking stupid. Stupid, stupid, stupid. This is not that type of situation. You give Justin Fields every chance to compete for the job and win it. And if he wins it, or if it's close, you go with the young kid and see what the fuck you've got. Starting Dalton or Foles has zero appeal and makes zero damn sense whatsoever. Period. You have no argument otherwise. You must give Justin Fields every chance to compete for the starting job, and if it's close enough, he wins it. The future is now. Get out of your old dated kind of mindset here. Burrow started right away. He was fine until he got injured. Herbert started right away. Fucking offensive rookie of the year. How stupid did the Dolphins look for passing out him for goddamn Tua? Tua sat and watched for a month and a half, and how much did that help him? Like, it makes no sense. He has to be given a chance to start. Bears fans should also be comfortable with the fact of you're going to have trouble building around him. I'm talking about Justin Fields with this front office and with this organization, unless they're going to totally change their mindset and approach, which you see absolutely zero evidence of doing so. What makes you think they would go all in? When have they ever truly gone in recent times? They haven't. They have not. You must also be comfortable with the fact that in order to justify making this deal up, this has to mean that Pace is there more than this year, and possibly Nagy too. Because if they're not, then why in the fuck would Bean, Counting Ted, and Goofy George sign off on this shit? Why would you let them trade up and tie your organization to a quarterback for the next 4 to 5 years? And if this season goes poorly, you might fire one of both of these guys. Now you're bringing in potentially a new general manager who's going to have a quarterback that might not fit the vision, that might not be any damn good. And all the while, you don't have, by the way, a first and fourth round pick to start the rebuild with. You got to be comfortable with that. And let's be clear here. There is absolutely nothing on Ryan Pace's track record that indicates he understands anything about the damn quarterback position. When you talk about the combination of off-season moves, like some of the free agencies signed, trading for Foles, signing Dalton Glennon before that. You talk about, well, we should get this salary cap for. It doesn't matter. You could have done that with other quarterbacks. He did it with Giraffe Neck. He traded up, panicked from 3-2 to go get Trubisky, and Trubisky sucked. Did he panic here? He sure did. Did he have some justification for panicking? Potentially. They didn't totally drop their pants here, but they got fingered a little bit by the Giants on this. You better hope it works. You better hope it works. I will say this, though. If you're a Bears fan, one other thing that should give you some reason for optimism. A couple of years ago, we look at the 2018 draft. You had 5 quarterbacks going round 1. Lamar obviously was at the tail end of round 1. But it was Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen that got the most hype. Baker goes 1, Sam Darnold goes 3, Josh Rosen goes 10. Rosen was an uber bust. Darnold was a disappointment, now gone 3 years later from the Jets. They drafted Zach Wilson. Baker's a solid starter, could be a franchise guy, but Stefanski literally coached scared in that divisional round game when Mahomes was out. You had Baker and you were afraid to put the ball in his hands to win the game. Meanwhile, Josh Allen, who was the 3rd quarterback taken in that draft, 7th overall, the Bills got him, and he was an MVP contender this past year. He was the 3rd quarterback taken. Lamar Jackson is a former league MVP, and he was the 5th quarterback selected. So to that point, the odds are is that either Justin Fields or Mac Jones is going to be a stud in the league, and potentially both of them could be. There is also strong evidence that one of those two could be a massive bust in the league, and one of the guys taken ahead of them, whether that be a Lance, a Wilson, or a Trevor Lawrence, will be a bust or a massive bust. It's a crapshoot. It really is. That said, though, it's done now. Whatever reservations I have about it, whatever concerns I have about them potentially having taken the wrong guy, whatever concerns I have about Pace panicking like he always does and giving up too much when he didn't need to do it, I could talk about all those things. I could talk about, why would you trust Ryan Pace to make this decision when he's never made a right one at that position? These are all valid things. Now, sometimes you make mistakes, and that's how you grow and improve and learn. And I got to give not benefit of the doubt, but I get to give some understanding that just because you made past decisions doesn't damn you in perpetuity in the future. But when you see the same type of pattern of behavior and other things that lead up to this, you should have concerns. You want to be excited about Justin Fields? You should be. Because it's not Trubisky. He actually has elite physical tools. You're looking at a guy that could go down as being the 2nd best quarterback in Bears history behind Sid Luckman. Sid Luckman's a legend, an all-time great, Hall of Famer, 4-time NFL champion. That's pretty good company to be in. That's the level of upside that this young man has. Now, I'm going to be sitting there the next 3-4 years and praying to whoever the hell that, God damn it, I want this kid to develop. I want him to be that dude. I want to eat my own fucking words. I've waited long enough for this opportunity. I don't want to sit there and waste cycles another 3 or 4 years finding out he's not the guy, and then you got to figure out who the fuck the next opportunity or the next bust is going to be. He has to be it. And now is incumbent upon the Bears to fundamentally shift and change everything that they do with their organization. Everything else the rest of this draft weekend must be on offense. If you suggest anything on defense, you're a moron. Get out of that Bears football mindset. The only thing that matters, the only thing that you should give 2 shits about right now, even going into 2021, I don't give a fuck if they went 15-1 with Andy Dalton as their damn starter. Who gives a shit? You're playing the long-term game. You're playing the infinite game here. This is about Justin Fields and his growth and development and establishing whether or not he could be that dude, that savior for the Chicago Bears. That is the only fucking thing that matters. So as a result, everything you do in the draft, everything you do in the offseason, until you get that offense to elite level talent at every place around him, that is all that matters, period. Because as badly as any other organization, the Chicago Bears need Justin Fields to be that savior. The Jags have had 4,000-yard passing seasons from their quarterbacks. The Eagles just finally got one. The Jets have one in their history. The Browns, for God's sakes, have them. The only NFL team that has never had a 4,000-yard passer is the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields can actually be that, what Trubisky was never going to be. That talent is there. Give him a chance to compete. Give him that fucking starting job. Give him as much help around him as possible. Do not be satisfied with what you got, because that's a mediocrity mindset if I've ever seen one. He can be the savior. He absolutely can. I have no choice. I have to believe in that now. I have to go all in on it. It does not change anything else that I've said in this video, because I feel it's all true. That doesn't mean you have to like it. That doesn't mean you have to agree with it. That doesn't mean that we need to always be on the same wavelength or level when talking about this stuff. That's okay. I bring balance to the force, if anything else. I have my concerns and my reservations. But damn it, Justin Fields, I hope to God you prove me the hell wrong. Please, please, please. Just one time in my life, I would like to see my football team have a quarterback that I could be proud of, a quarterback that I could brag about, a quarterback that I could talk shit about to other people saying, you wish you had my dude. We'll find out in time whether he's a savior or not. Either a bunch of teams passed on him because their evaluations were more aligned with mine and a lot of y'all are wrong, or it's just an indication why some of those teams are drafting what the fuck they were, because they're stupid and they passed on a guy that could change their organization for the next 15 years.